Luis Carrero Blanco, the 4th of March 1904, the 20th of December 1973, was a Spanish Navy officer and politician who served as Prime Minister of Spain from June 1973 until his assassination in December of that year. He participated in the two major Spanish conflicts of the interwar period, the Rif War in Morocco, and later the Spanish Civil War, in which he supported the nationalist side. Carrero Blanco, a longtime confidant and right-hand man of Francisco Franco, was one of the most prominent figures in the Francoist dictatorship's power structure, holding throughout his career a number of high-ranking offices such as those of Undersecretary of the Prime Minister's Office and Deputy Prime Minister. He also was the main drafter behind the 1947 law of succession to the headship of the state. Carrero ended up succeeding Franco as head of government in June 1973, due to Franco's worsening health. Shortly after his ascension to the premiership, Carrero Blanco was assassinated in a roadside bombing on the 20th of December 1973 by the armed Basque nationalist group Euskadita Askatasuna (EDA) while returning from Mass in his car. He was posthumously awarded the nobiliary title of Duke of Carrero Blanco. Life. Early life. Luis Carrero Blanco was born on the 4th of March 1904 in the coastal town of Santona, Cantabria, to Camilo Carrero Gutierrez, 1879–1936, a lieutenant colonel in the army stationed in nearby Santander, and Angeles Blanco Abascal, 1885–1910, a local woman. He had his early schooling at the Colegio Manzanares in Santona, and in 1918, at the age of 14, he followed the family military tradition by enlisting at the Spanish Naval Academy in San Fernando. By 18, he had already achieved the rank of lieutenant, serving aboard the dreadnought Alfonso XIII, and participated in the Rif War from 1924–1926. In 1926, he decided to specialize in submarine warfare, and served as lieutenant commander on the B-2 and as commander on the B-5. In 1929, he married Maria del Carmen Picotti Villa, 1909–1984, with whom he had 5 children. Civil War. At the outset of the Spanish Civil War, Carrero Blanco was a naval instructor teaching submarine tactics at the Naval Warfare College in Madrid. As a military man of conservative views, he knew that he was marked. His brother Jose had already been detained and subsequently executed, and his father died on the day of his arrest. Like many people who found themselves on the wrong side, he sought refuge first in the Mexican embassy and later that of France, from where he was able to cross the border from San Sebastian into France and re-enter on the nationalist side in June 1937. Carrero Blanco then served in the Nationalist Navy, first as corvette captain aboard the destroyer Huesca and later the submarine General San Giorgio. Following the nationalist victory and subsequent establishment of Generalissimo Franco as Caudillo of Spain, Carrero Blanco was appointed Chief of Naval Operations in August 1939. Political career. Carrero Blanco was made Vice Admiral in 1963 and Admiral in 1966. He was Deputy Prime Minister from 1967 to 1973. By that time, Franco, even if he was still then the head of state and concurrent Prime Minister, had already delegated the day-to-day running of the government over to Carrero Blanco himself, owing to the former's old age and illness. And the latter excelled on this regard, in terms of carrying Franco's policies and in directing the ministries towards that direction. His zenith came on the 8th of June 1973, when being named the Prime Minister of Spain and made a top deputy to Franco, who remained as head of state with some substantial powers in compliance with the organic law of the state ratified in 1967, which separated the posts of the head of state and Prime Minister. It seemed as though it was only a matter of time before he would succeed the ailing Franco. Death. 6 months after being named Prime Minister, Carrero Blanco was assassinated on the 20th of December 1973 in Madrid by 4 members of an ETA cell, who carried out a bombing near San Francisco de Borja Church on Calle de Serrano while he returned from daily mass in a Dodge 3700. In a collective interview justifying the attack, the EDA bombers said, "The execution in itself had an order and some clear objectives. From the beginning of 1951, Carrero Blanco practically occupied the government headquarters. Carrero Blanco symbolized better than anyone else the figure of pure Francoism, and without totally linking himself to any of the Francoist tendencies, he covertly attempted to push Opus Dei into power. A man without scruples conscientiously mounted his own state within the state. He created a network of informers within the ministries, in the army, in the Phalange, and also in Opus Dei. His police managed to put themselves into all the Francoist apparatus. Thus he made himself the key element of the system and a fundamental piece of the oligarchy's political game. On the other hand, he came to be irreplaceable for his experience and capacity to maneuver, and because nobody managed as he did to maintain the internal equilibrium of François M. His first speech to the Cortes on the 12th of February 1974, Carrero Blanco's successor as Prime Minister, Carlos Arias Navarro, promised liberalizing reforms including the right to form political associations. Though he was denounced by Phalangists, the transition had begun. Reprisal: one of the members of the cell who had assassinated Carrero Blanco was himself assassinated by a car bomb in southern France on the 21st of December 1978 by a special team organized within the Navy. This group included a member of the Higher Center of Defense Information Secret Service, another from the Naval Intelligence Service, and the other belonged to the Defense High Command. In addition, it received assistance from a number of right-wing paramilitary groups through Jean-Pierre Cheyred, OAS, José María Bacardo, Argentine Anti-Communist Alliance, and Mario Ricci, Vanguardia Nacional de Argala. The code name by which the EDA member was known, was the only one who could identify the source who had handed Carrero Blanco's schedule and itinerary over to EDA. According to Leonidas, a former member of the Spanish army who participated in the bombing against Argala, the explosives came from a U.S. base. I don't remember exactly if it was from Torrejón or Rota, but I do know that the Americans did not know what they would be used for. It was a personal favor for Pedro El Marino, Pedro Martinez, who provided the explosives. Argala's assassination was claimed by the Spanish Basque Battalion. However, according to Leonidas, BVE, ATE, Anti-Terrorismo EDA or AAA are only labels of convenience that are used by the same group. Funeral and burial: Carrero Blanco's funeral, which would be one Franco's last public appearances, was held the following day at the Basilica of St. Francis the Great, Madrid, and he was buried at Moncorrubio Cemetery in the neighboring municipality of El Pardo. Political views: Blanco himself was a monarchist. Devoted to the Roman Catholic Church, he was close to Opus Dei. In 1951, he was closely involved in the production of the film Dawn of America, a patriotic work portraying Christopher Columbus' discovery of the Americas. Carrero Blanco worked on the screenplay of the film, which was strongly supported by the government for its nationalist theme. Ideology and positions: Carrero did not clearly belong to any family within the regime. His ultimate identification was with the work of the dictator. As such, he can be considered a pure Francoist. Antonio Elorza described as most distinct features of his ideology the ideas of counter-revolution, anti-communism and satanization of Masonry, all according to a conspirative vision of history, in line with the degraded Augustinianism. Also known to have dropped anti-Islamite diatribes. By the time of 1941, he saw the state of affairs of a world in war as follows: Spain, paladin of the faith in Christ, is again acting against the true enemy, Judaism. Because the world, even if it does not look like it, lives in a permanent war of religious type. It is the struggle of Christianism against Judaism. War to the death, as the fight of good against evil should be. Carrero, who held paternalist views when assessing the Spanish presence in Africa, was refractory towards the acceptance of the decolonization process. as he declared that the Western Sahara had not ever been controlled by the Moroccan Empire. He defended that the territory was as Spanish as the province of Cuenca. Openly Germanophile in his articles written for the Mundo magazine during the first part of World War II. After the turn in the conflict against the Axis powers in 1943, he modulated his hostile discourse towards the Allied powers in those pieces. Finally, after the defeat of the Axis, he had wholly replaced the message attacking the liberal democracies by a merely anti-Soviet one. A defender of the idea that the victory of the Francoist side in the Civil War had happened despite an alleged international conspiration against the former. Years later, in the 1950s, he insisted again, "This is precisely the Spanish problem. Spain want to implement the good, and the forces of evil, unleashed upon the world, tried to prevent her from doing it." He was reportedly among the endorsers of the so-called Proyecto Islero, an alleged secret plan to develop a nuclear weapon for Spain. Regarding the future of a post-Franco Spain, Carrero, along López Rodo, envisaged and promoted the idea of an authoritarian monarchy guaranteeing the continuity of Francoism. See also List of unsolved murders. Service summary. Orders, decorations and medals. Military Grand Cross of Naval Merit with White Distinction, 1943. Grand Official of the Order of Africa, 1961. Grand Cross of Military Merit with White Distinction, 1963. Grand Cross of Aeronautical Merit with White Distinction, 1967. Civil Grand Collar of the Imperial Order of the Red Arrows, 1939. Grand Cross of the Order of Isabella the Catholic, 1942. Grand Cross of the Order of Charles III, 1970. Grand Collar of the Order of Cisneros, 1970. Nobiliary 1st Duke of Carrero Blanco, Grandee of Spain, 1973. Works. Carrero Blanco wrote a number of books on the Spanish Navy and Spanish naval military history, as well as political treatises on communism and Freemasonry, under the pseudonym Juan de la Cosa. Carrero Blanco, Luis, 1933. Los Baleares durante la Guerra de América en el siglo XVIII. The Balearics during the American War in the 18th century, in French. Paris. Carrero Blanco, Luis, 1941. España y el Mar, Spain and the Sea, in Spanish. Madrid. Editorial Nacional. Carrero Blanco, Luis, 1941. Cinematic Aeronaval Kinematics, in Spanish. Madrid. Editorial Naval. Carrero Blanco, Luis, 1943. Arte Naval Militar. El Buque de Guerra de la Guerra al Portaaviones. Naval Military Art. The Warship, from the Galley to the Aircraft Carrier, in Spanish. 2. Madrid. Editorial Naval. Carrero Blanco, Luis, 1947. La Guerra Aeronaval en el Atlántico y en el Ártico. Aeronaval Warfare in the Atlantic and the Arctic, in Spanish. Madrid. Editions Idea. Carrero Blanco, Luis, 1947. La Guerra Aeronaval en el Mediterráneo y en el Pacífico. Aeronaval Warfare in the Mediterranean and the Pacific, in Spanish. Madrid. Editions Idea. Carrero Blanco, Luis, 1948. La Victoria del Cristo de Lepanto. The Victory of the Christ of Lepanto, in Spanish. Barcelona. Editorial Nacional. Carrero Blanco, Luis, 1971. Lepanto, 1571-1971, in Spanish. Salvat Editorial Alianza Editorial.de. La Cosa, Juan, 1949. La Gran Baza Soviética. The Great Soviet Advantage. Comentarios de un Español, in Spanish. Valencia. Semana Gráfica. De la Cosa, Juan, 1950. Las Doctrinas del Comsomol. The Comsomol Doctrines. Comentarios de un Español, in Spanish. Valencia. Semana Gráfica. De la Cosa, Juan, 1950. España ante el mundo. Proceso de un aislamiento. Spain before the world. Process of isolation, in Spanish. Madrid. Editions Idea. De la Cosa, Juan, 1952. Gibraltar. Comentarios en Español, in Spanish. Valencia. Semana Gráfica. De la Cosa, Juan, 1956. Los Modernas Torres de Babel, The Modern Towers of Babel, in Spanish. Editions Idea. De la Cosa, Juan, 1973. Comentarios en Español. Las Tribulaciones de Don Prudencio. Diplomacia Subterránea, in Spanish. Madrid. Fueras Nueva. References Citations Bibliography Julian. Operation Ogro. The Execution of Admiral Luis Carrero Blanco. Quadrangle. ISBN 0-8129-0552-0.cs1 maint. Ref Harv. Link. Alvarez Chilada, Gonzalo, 2007. La eclosion del antisemitismo español. De la Second República al Holocausto. In Gonzalo Alvarez Chilada and Ricardo Izquierdo Benito, ed. El antisemitismo en España. Cuenca. Edición Onés de la Universidad de Castilla-La Mancha. p. 181-206. ISBN 978-84-8427-471-1.cs1 maint. Ref Harv. Link. Benitez, Emilio, Antonio Elorza, 1970. Un comentario sobre Carrero Blanco. Cuadernos de Rudo Iberico. Paris. Editions Rudo Iberico. Pages 128-130. ISSN 0011-2488.cs1 maint. Ref Harv. Link. Jimenez Martinez, Miguel Angel, 2014. Enter el poder y la obediencia. El gobierno en la España de Franco. Bulletin for Spanish and Portuguese Historical Studies. 39. Spanish and Portuguese Historical Studies. ISSN 0739-182x.cs1 maint. Ref Harv. Link. Pastrana, Jose, Contreras, Juan, Pic, Josep, 2015. La demonización del comunismo durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial en Mundo, Revista de Política Exterior y Economía. Vínculos de Historia. Ciudad Real. Universidad de Castilla-La Mancha, 4, 348-370. doi:10.18239/vdh.v0i4.165. ISSN 2254-6901.cs1 maint. Ref Harv. Link. Preston, Paul, 2005. The Monarchy of Juan Carlos. From Dictator's Dreams to Democratic Realities. In Balfour, Sebastian, ed. The Politics of Contemporary Spain. London and New York, Routledge. Pages 27-38. ISBN 0-415-35677-6.cs1 maint. Ref Harv. Link. Suarez Fernandez, Luis, Espadas Burgos, Manuel, 1991. La époque de Franco. Historia General de España y América the 19th 2. Madrid. Edition Onés Real. Tucel, Javier, 1993. Carrero, Eminencia del Régimen de Franco. Temas de hoy.cs1 maint. Ref Harv. Link.